office in every single University of Florida has an extension office in every single county, all 67. We also have research centers, and I'm way down here, right here in Homestead, which is in south of Miami. And we also have a research center there called the Tropical Research Education Center. So I work with a tropical fruit specialist, a tropical fruit entomologist, a tropical fruit plant breeder, a plant pathologist. They're all the PhDs, and my job is to extend that information to commercial and growers and also to homeowners. And I do something called Tropical Fruit Tuesdays about once a month. And next Tuesday, we're going to have Tropical Fruit IPM. July, we're doing the mango. So you guys are getting a preview of that talk tonight. August, we're doing tropical fruit aftercare. So what do you do with your fruit tree after you plant it or after you pick the fruit? And then September, we're going to do propagation by cuttings. So these are always on Tuesday. They're always at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So if you ever want to attend those, you can just send me an email and I will sign you up for the email list. So I always like to start by saying, where can you get good information? So we have something at the University of Florida called Ask IFAS. And this is a database that has all kinds of peer-reviewed publications. So if you Google Ask IFAS or you search Ask IFAS, you get to this screen. It says, what can we help you with? If you put in mango, you'll get something called Successfully Growing the Mango in the Home Landscape. It'll be about a 12, 15-page document that has everything you ever want to know about growing mangoes. In the end, it has a chart of all the different cultivars. It has a monthly, month-by-month chart of what you need to do, like what fertilizer, when do you prune it, when do you look for pests, things like that. So really good information. If you can't find something there, you can always search the topic with EDU, then you find other universities. I know you guys have some really good ones out there, which is probably the first place you should go for information. YouTube, a lot of good information there. We were just talking about some videos by Richard Campbell on YouTube that are really good. You can learn so much there because they're showing you what to do. Of course, you get some bad information there, but if you watch like 3 or 4 videos, you get the gist. And then the Tropical Fruit Tuesdays are all on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube and search Tropical Fruit Tuesdays, you'll find them all there. They're about 45 minutes each, so it's quite a view to get through them, but they're webinars. So another good place to get information is Master Gardeners. This is a national program, so I'm sure you have some there. Number one place to get information is your own garden or your own grove. If you see it with your own eyes, you know it's true. So very important that you walk your grove, you're in your grove, and you pay attention to your garden or your grove. And then finally, beware of the source of your information. There's a lot of false information out there, so just be careful with that. So I think someone's off mute. So I like to start with this photograph of a Kerry mango that I took, that I was in an extension office in West Florida in Naples, and I found these 2 Kerrys, and Josephine had written her name and her phone number, and then at the bottom she wrote, "You touch, you die." So this kind of shows you the passion of the mango. There were 2 mangoes. She picked the biggest one and said, "It's mine. You touch it, I'm going to kill you." How do we know it's a fact? Because she put her phone number. She was like, "Please, just call me. We'll see what happens if you touch my mango." So it's a passionate fruit. I know you guys are very passionate about your fruit, but we are here as well, as you can see by Josephine. So I took a look at the 10-year average of temperatures in San Diego and Miami. And you guys are a lot cooler. I'm really jealous of your temperatures. We're a lot warmer. But what we see here is for us going into like November, December, January, February, March, we have this cool down, and we also get a lot less rain at that time. So we get really dry and we get really and cooler. So our plants, our mangoes, they're growing, 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 and then they stop growing. They're just kind of sitting there and they're waiting for the environmental cue. And we get a good cool front, and that's the cue. And then a month later, everybody's blooming at the same time. So you guys, you're pretty similar across the board there. So I don't know that you would get that environmental cue. So I would guess that your mangoes are gonna kind of sporadically bloom, and they're not all gonna bloom at once like ours do. More like it would in the tropics, but in the tropics, it's because it's just warmer all the time. You guys, it's kind of cooler. So that's my guess is what would be going on for you guys. You can correct me at the end if I'm wrong. Rainfall, here's a big difference. We get over 60 inches. You guys only get about 10. So you're pretty dry all the time, which would help the mangoes. They don't need a lot of water, which so you could do that with supplemental irrigation. But we do that. The rain does kind of stop going into November for us, and then it gets dry and cool, and that slows everything down. So first, I'm going to talk about some different cultivars, some newer ones that you guys may or may not know. So, so this first one is called Fairchild. I have one in my yard. I have one at my grove at work, and it came from Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden as a curator choice. The tree may need to be a little larger to produce well. It's very disease tolerant, has excellent flavor. It's ready in June to July, and it's about 8 to 10 ounces. Malacca, also from Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden. This one has commercial potential. It's a very good producer, about 10 to 16 ounces, really good flavor, June to July. You ripen it off the tree. You don't let it get ripe or really mature on the tree. You take it off and let it ripen off the tree. And for us, it's the only true Indian mango that we can grow because of our humidity. You guys can probably grow a lot more. Rosy Gold, another one I have in my yard. This will set pretty heavy. It can begin to decline because it sets so heavy. It's super early. I've already gotten a lot of mangoes off my Rosy Gold in May. Very good flavor, 9 to 11 ounces. Angie, this is a newer one, newer than the other ones I just showed you, named after Angie Whitman, Angela Whitman. Tree is naturally small, disease tolerant, 14-ounce fruit, really good flavor, also commercial potential. And there were other Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden curator choices. These were ones that were picked to be really good. But Ice Cream, Gene Ellen, and Graham were all dropped from the curator choice list because they didn't quite work out as well as these other ones that I'm showing you. Lemon meringue, which was originally Pupu Kalai, can be about 8 ounces, very early and good flavor. Now, we mentioned at the very beginning, if you were tuned in, some Gary Zill mangoes. These are Gary Zill selections. Well, this one's called Sweet Tart. Gary Zill is a nurseryman in Boynton Beach. He sells almost all the mangoes to places like Home Depot and Lowe's, and he's very big grower of potted plants, potted fruit plants. he planted a whole bunch of seedlings, and then he made his selections by the scent. He would break up the leaves and smell the leaves, and then based on what he could smell, he kept those seedlings or he didn't. So this is one he kept, called Sweet Tart. Can be about 6 to 10 ounces. The season is pretty early. It needs to be thin to get the fruit up to size. It is sweet and tart, as the name says, and has good disease tolerance. Another Gary's Hill was Little Gem. Jakarta is one of its parents. July to August, small fruit, needs to be thinned as well. Tree stays small, sets very well. Good disease tolerance and good rich Indian flavor. See, it's very pretty. Coconut cream. This is a Gary's Hill selection. May need to be a certain size to bloom. It's variable in size with the fruit. Flavor is good. Fruit may look blemished, and it's vigorous. I was just talking to Richard Campbell today, and he's going to get rid of his coconut creams in his grove because the tree is too vigorous, and he likes trees that are more calm. Orange sherbet, this one is a winner, Gary's Hill selection. It's got high commercial potential. Season is June to August. Small, manageable tree, blooms easy, excellent flavor, good disease tolerance, good size, good shape, stores well. You notice a lot of these fruit, they come early in the season. For us, the season is usually like late May to August. You can stretch it out a little more, but that's about what it is. But you notice a lot of these are May and June because that way they don't get a lot of the summer rains, which start up around now. So they don't get all that anthracnose. And also they have a better chance of missing the hurricane seasons, which is a big problem for us. Okay, so those were some cultivars that I wanted to show you. Now we're going to talk about mangoes. I know you guys do a lot of propagation, so you know a lot of this, but when you get your mango tree, you want it to be properly propagated. So what does that mean? That means you're probably going to want it grafted. You see on the right, you see this mango tree that's grafted right there. You can see the graft. See, this is a class that I was teaching. They're doing grafting over here. So why do you want it grafted and not from seed? Well, if it's from seed, you know the mother. Let's say you want to grow, someone mentioned a Valencia Pride. Let's say you want to grow a Valencia Pride. So you took the seed of that Valencia Pride and you went to plant it. You know the mom is a Valencia Pride, but the father was something else. So that seed is going to be not a Valencia Pride. It's going to be something else. So you don't really want to grow from seed unless you're trying to get something new. But if you grow from seed, it's going to have to go through all the stages of sexual maturity. So it's going to take maybe 7 to 11 years before it can finally flower. If you grow something that's grafted, you take this piece, this top piece, and graft it into a rootstock. This top piece is a piece of the Valencia Pride. So you're cloning that tree and putting it on young, healthy roots. And that piece of the Valencia Pride is also sexually mature. So it can bloom right away. So here you see on the right, a very small mango, just over a year old, and it's already trying to bloom. Now, I wouldn't let a mango tree this size bloom because if it held fruit, it would really damage the tree. But this is just to illustrate that it's trying to bloom. I have some cuttings right now that I'm growing of a mulberry, ever-bearing mulberry, and the cuttings are coming out with leaves right now, and also one of them has flowers. So it's showing you that, when you grow things, when you propagate things asexually and you clone them, they're already sexually mature. So you have your tree, you pick the cultivar that you want, it's grafted, so you know it's what you want. So where do you plant it? You have to plant it in the full sun. It needs sun because the sun will give the tree energy, which will create enough energy to make flowers and fruit. So here we see a mango grove in Homestead. On the left, you have Valencia Prize. And on the right, you have Namdok Mais. They're all the same age. So you can see a difference in the growth rate of these. But what you do see is they're all getting plenty of sunlight. As long as we keep these pruned and off each other, they'll get plenty of sun. So you pick the spot, you want it in the sun. You're gonna now dig the hole and check the roots. So this is what we use to dig here. I don't know how your soil is, but I'm sure it's better than ours. We have limestone, we have just pure rock. So we don't use shovels. This is what we use to dig. And when we dig the hole a little bit bigger than the container. And because we can't dig it much bigger, we'll die. It's too hard. So we dig it a little bit bigger than the container, and then we take the plant out of the container and look at the roots. Make sure the roots aren't all wrapped up. If they are, we'll cut those roots. If they're not, they're in good shape, we'll put it in the ground. Then we want to make sure that we plant it at the right depth. If we plant too deep, that's going to be a problem. These are some mangoes in a grove that I went to, and just about all of them were planted too deep. So you want to plant them at the right level. You also want to protect your plant. Once you get it in the ground, you want to put something around it so weed whacker guy can't get to it. So you can put mulch like this, you can put a little piece of plastic like I have, or you can just remove all the grass and weeds about a foot around in diameter, or 2 feet in diameter, around the tree to keep the weed whacker away, to keep the mowers away. Otherwise, you're going to get hit. Here's what happens if you don't protect your trees. This is an avocado, and I pulled it out of the ground and laid it on the ground, so we're looking at it from up above. You see all that weed whacker damage. The tree was dead, so it got girdled. But what we do see here is where it was planted, the level right here. You can see the first flare root is there and there. So this was planted at the correct level. So that's good. If we were to see a soil line up here, we know it was planted too deep. So why don't we want the tree to get weed whacked? Well, most of our fruit trees are dicots, and dicots have this on the inside. So we cut it from above, we're looking at it. In the middle, you have xylem. On the outside, you have phloem. And in the middle, you have cambium. Cambium makes more xylem and phloem. And in the xylem, the water goes up to the top of the tree. In the phloem, the energy that the leaves create goes down. So if we cut that, we're strangling the tree, we're girdling the tree. The tree can no longer feed itself. So another thing to really look out for is herbicide damage. So you have your tree planted, you have it protected with mulch, but now you're going to spray some herbicide near it because you want to kill the weeds that are there. You don't want to hand pull them. Well, that can be really dangerous for mangoes. They're very sensitive to herbicide. So we're going to take a little tour here of the research center where they sprayed herbicide right near some new mangoes I had planted. So there you can see the herbicide line right there. You see where they sprayed. Now we're going to look at the bottoms of some of these trees where they got in there. Right there, you see herbicide damage. At the bottom of these mangoes, you see it there. You see the burns right there. And then you see it. Now we're looking at the bigger trees where they sprayed underneath. You see a lot of burn there as well. You see it there, there. And they were killing these baby mangoes. Those were the weeds, which would be pretty easy just to pull out, come out nice and easy. So you got to be careful with herbicide. Fertilizer. Mangoes do not like a lot of nitrogen. So this typical fruit tree special for us is an 839. That is too much nitrogen for a mango. I would do something like a 0, 0, 22 or something like that. I don't know how your phosphorus is there. We have plenty of phosphorus, but what we need for our mangoes is potassium and not too much nitrogen. So something like a 0, 0, 22 would be ideal, or 0, 0, 44, something like that would be ideal for a mango because they get a lot of nitrogen just from the mulch and things like that. So when you put out your fertilizer, this is how you don't do it. Here's a palm tree on the right. You see they put a bunch of fertilizer all in a clump right next to the tree. Here's a tree on the left where they actually put fertilizer on the trunk of the tree. So we don't want that. What we do want is the fertilizer out here in the drip line. So that's where you would put it, and you would spread it out. You don't put it in clumps like we saw in the picture. Now pruning, a word about pruning. I like to prune a lot, and I like to keep the trees manageable. So I like to keep a tree like 12 by 12 or 15 by 15. I don't like to pick with a picking pole like this. I'd rather not. I'd rather just be able to get it much easier. And that also keeps a lot of sunlight on the tree when you keep them smaller. And for us, it stops them from getting really whacked from hurricanes. So one way we do that is when the trees are younger, we do something called tipping, which is like pinching. So you have a single mango stalk and you just cut the top. You cut the top and you see all this new growth right here, here, and here. And this is what happens. Instead of one stalk now, you have 6 or 5 or 4. So instead of one place where you could get flowers, now you have 6. So here is a larger mango that I'm going to tip here. We're going to tip all of this. So just tip it like that, and that will cause this to put out 3 to 4 branches. So you can see over time, you have 3 branches where you would have 1. So now each one of these ones will have 3 instead of 1. So you multiply all your growing points and you keep it smaller that way. So here's a tree that's been tipped that's older, and you can see it's very compact because it was tipped. So these are all the scaffold limbs at this point. So here's a little tipping demo. Here's a small Tommy Atkins tree, and I'm just gonna tip it real easy. You don't really have to pick a perfect spot. You just kind of get the top off. Just checking for any more. So now those 4 will come out with 4 of their own. So instead of 4 growing points, you have 16. So that you're going to do the tipping in the first couple years before the tree is ready to really bloom. So maybe 2 years of tipping. Then after that, you leave the tree alone and let it flower and fruit. And when it flowers and when it fruits, after you pick that last fruit, that's when you go in and do your pruning for the year, where you're either going to do tipping, you're going to take out a big vertical branch or something to control the height, but you do it after you pick the fruit. And you don't want to wait too long. Let's say you pick the last fruit in August, you really don't want to wait until November to prune, because that's going to disrupt the blooming cycle. So here's a grove where they had trees on the fence line that they did not prune, trees in the grove that they did prune. The ones that they did prune, they pruned them a little late. So you have very little bloom. The ones on the outside, they didn't prune them. So you have a lot of bloom because they didn't prune them too late. They didn't prune them at all. Another thing that you can do with pruning that's bad is you can prune too much. Let's say we have a mango tree and we take off 50% of the canopy. Well, that's too much because now the tree is going to want to regrow the canopy. So it's going to give you 1 or 2 years of just growing leaves rather than being able to flower and fruit. Okay, so we have one more thing to talk about with mangoes at the end, which will be like when to pick them and how to pick them. But I did see in your flyer that I was going to talk about grafting. I didn't know I was going to talk about grafting, but I read the flyer. So I added in some grafting information here. That's how I do it. That's how extension agents do it. We just get the job done. So general grafting info, and I know you guys do like grafting workshops and classes and things, so you'll know a lot of this. Grafting can be difficult. Practice makes perfect. Your material, your rootstock, and your scion should be healthy. Rootstock, scion, or budwood. Budwood or scion is the top part. Rootstock is the bottom part. The rootstock and the scion should be the same size. You want to maintain hydration of your budwood and after you graft it. You see this picture of this avocado here that was grafted. It's all sealed up to maintain the hydration. We also see that the rootstock is trying to put out new growth, so we'd want to cut that. You usually do this in the growing season, the grafting, and aftercare is crucial. You can't just graft it and then just leave it in the sun. So when do you graft? Most species are done in the summer months when it's more humid. Avocado is one you do in the winter months. It is best to take budwood and graft on a waning moon. This is the true thing. So when the moon is kind of pulling away, that kind of pulls the budwood out. So that's the real thing. You might have heard that, but it's a real thing. So here is that same picture of a very young mango that was grafted and it's already blooming. So this asexual propagation where you clone the tree, you're also getting the age cloned as well. So here are a bunch of actually avocados that were grafted using cleft graft. And you see they're all labeled. This is what I want to show you is all these different labels. So when you do your graft, make sure you label them. Because if you graft 5 trees and they're all different, but you don't label them, those are now worthless to you because you don't know what they are. They're just mangoes that someday you'll figure out what they are. Okay, why does grafting work? Well, we talked earlier about the xylem and the phloem and the cambium. The cambium, I said, makes more xylem and more phloem. The more xylem, that's how you get those rings. The cambium keeps making xylem. So, but that cambium, which we see in the picture on the right, we need to make the cambium from the rootstock and the cambium from the budwood touch so they can get together and they can start passing things back and forth. That's how grafting works, by touching those cambium layers. So your grafting knife is going to be super sharp and it's going to be beveled, so angled on only one side. The back will be flat because you're going to want to just make a nice smooth cut, especially for a veneer graft. And I'm going to show you one of the types of grafting that I'm talking about. But it's not going to be a typical knife that's beveled on both sides that will cut. This is to make smooth cuts. Now this is a right-handed grafting knife because it's flat on the back. So your right hand would hold it and it would be flat on the back. If you're left-handed, you can get a left-handed grafting knife that's the other way. So you're going to take your budwood. Here we have Dr. Norris Ledesma, and she's going to take budwood of an avocado. So she goes, gets budwood. And when you get your budwood, you want the buds to be there, but not pushed. This one is too far. This is a mango where the bud has already come out. So this is actually too far. This would not be good budwood. On the left, this is good budwood. You see the little buds, but they're not pushed out yet. That's pretty good. So you're going to cut your budwood. Typically, you take off all the leaves and you bag it before as you're moving it from one place to another. You should label the bag so you know what you have. This keeps the hydration, which we talked about. And this is a cleft graft. So a cleft graft, you make a V on the bottom of the root of the budwood, and then you make a Y. You cut off the rootstock and you make a Y. You cut off the top, you put a slice down the middle, so that V goes into the Y like that. And this rootstock is a little too small, but she's making it work. Now she wants to tie that together so the cambiums touch. So she's using a rubber band, and then you can also use grafting tape. And then once you use the rubber band, you can also use this Parafilm M. This is a really good product that is just really stretchy. So you can wrap around like that. That's Parafilm. You just wrap around like that. And that keeps it hydrated. And the Parafilm is soft enough that the buds can break through it. You don't have to cut them. Okay, so that was grafting. And now we're gonna, before we get to the questions, we're gonna look at really when do you pick your mangoes. So you wanna be watching your mangoes, watching. And when you see the shoulders kind of get wider, that's telling you that they're getting close to mature. A lot of mangoes will have a color break, so it makes it really easy. So here's a Glen, and you can see the difference, the ones that are mature all the way and ready to pick, and the ones that are getting there. Now, if you pick that one on the right, the bottom left in the right picture, it's big enough that it would probably be mature and it would ripen. It would just take a little longer, and you have to keep it, fairly warm. So we're going to take a look at some trees that have fruit on them, and we're going to look at which ones would be the ones we'd pick. This is my grove at work. There's a Kent, or that's a Glen rather. So you see the ones that are ready there. Pretty obvious right there. Lots of Glens that are ready. See one, there's one. Not ready. These are close enough that they could be picked. Not ready quite yet, but they're probably mature. That one's super ready. Not ready, not ready, not ready. Super ready. Those are kits, so they won't be ready for a while. See, the shoulders are not that wide. These are kits too that aren't ready. And the last thing is how to pick. If you pick and you just break the mango off, you'll get that sap that comes out. And remember, mangoes are related to poison ivy. So that sap, if you get it on the soft parts of your body, if you touch the sap and then touch by your eyes, or you get it on your wrists, it'll give you dermatitis, just like poison ivy would. It'll make you break out. So one trick you can do is leave the stem like this on the left. You cut it, and then it doesn't ooze out all that sap. Now, the closer it is to being ripe, the less sap that's going to come out. But if you leave that little stub like that, it's going to not drip a lot of sap like it is on the right. Okay, I want to thank you guys so much for your time. There's my direct line and my email, sflhort@ufl.edu. If you have any questions that you think of after this, you're certainly able to email me. I can't see the chat now. So if you want to ask questions in the chat, you can do it there. Or if you want to just unmute yourself and ask a question that's fine as well.
Hey, how you doing? This is my name's Dron. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do mangoes require a lot of phosphorus?
No, not a lot. They like a lot of potassium, like a lot of fruit trees do. They don't require a lot of phosphorus. No.
What would be the ideal NPK mix for mangoes when you want to fertilize them?
Like I said, I would say like a 0-0-22, but we have some phosphorus in our ground. So I don't know, you might not have it. So maybe I would keep that number still small, the middle number, the phosphorus, but keep the last number higher and keep the nitrogen very low. You can have some.
Got it.
839 is too much nitrogen.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. We have a question from Teresa in the chat. Would it be possible to grow a mango in a greenhouse? Are there dwarf varieties you would recommend? So it could be done in a greenhouse. They do it in Japan that way. It's just going to be difficult. You're going to have problems with pollination. Again, the temperatures wouldn't fluctuate as much, so you wouldn't get a strong cue for a bloom. So it could be done, but it would be much easier not to, unless you really have, if you're really going to get a lot of cold, then maybe you can keep it in the greenhouse when it's cold and move it out when it's warmer. That'd be kind of a pain in the butt. And your other question, are there dwarf varieties? The ones I showed you are all pretty small. There's no real dwarf, but some of those ones I showed you are smaller. So you can't really get a dwarf, but you can prune them. Alva asked, go ahead.
Hi, I have a question. I'm wondering if there's an ideal time to plant. Like if you're going to plant in late spring or early summer in an area that will get into the 90s, possibly a couple days of hundreds, should you provide a shade structure for a smaller tree? Or do they just want all that sun and all that heat even when they're young?
Now, we don't get that problem here, but when I went to California, we went to the avocado groves, and the young trees, they did paint them white. They did paint them white. So I would probably say that's a good idea. If you're getting into the hundreds, for sure, I would paint the young trees white. And a good time to plant for us, now is a good time because our rainy season is about to start. But for you, you don't really have a rainy season from what I can tell. So you can probably plant anytime, but you're just kind of have to watch the irrigation.
My second question is, have you ever tried planting on a mound? Here we tend to have heavy clay soils, which can really hold the water and bind up the nutrients. So I have heard or read that using like decomposed granite and mixing a little in with the native soil and building on a mound could be helpful for drainage. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I didn't know your soil was had so much clay. Mangoes don't really like that. So yeah, putting on a mound would be a good idea, because we have a soil here besides our oolitic limestone. We have something called marl, which is like a clay, and the mangoes do not grow well in the marl. Alva asked if I could put up my email and phone number again. I can't because I need to read the chat, but I'll tell you it's S as in Sam, F as in Frank, L HORT@ufl.edu. And I'm sure we can email that to you as well. And the phone number is 305-679-0227. But I'm sure that you could get that if you email someone in charge here. We can get that to you. Corey and Lena asked.
There was a question about dwarf trees, what varieties are the best dwarf trees?
Okay, so a lot of the ones I showed you, like the Angie, um, there's one called Cog's Hall that's dwarfy, but it doesn't fruit that well. Fairchild, and they're not true dwarfs, but they do stay a little smaller. They have more compact internodes. So Angie, Fairchild, any of those ones that I showed, um, not coconut cream, that's more vigorous. Malacca would be a good one. So those, if you want to grow something dwarfy, I would really pick an Angie or a Fairchild or a Malacca if you like the Indian flavor. What else? Oh, Ken asked, what's the ideal age of a rootstock used for grafting? I would say about a year, when it's about the size of a pencil would be good. You can do it a little smaller, but you remember you just want to match your rootstock and your budwood. Corey and Lena asked in a direct message, we have a mature mango tree from seed that sets a lot of fruit, but 99% split and fall off when they're only an inch or so in size. Why would this be and how can we fix it? Well, splitting is usually caused when you don't have a lot of water and then you get a lot of water all at once, and that splits. But if you grew it from seed, it could just not be a great mango because a lot of mangoes do split, and you could just have a bad mango that just is prone to splitting. That could be what you have. Margaret asked, should I thin fruit on mature trees? Usually you don't need to for mangoes. Pauler's son says, what time of year do you tip the branches? So I do tipping all year for the first year and first 2 years of the tree's life. And we're probably going to get a lot more growing than you guys get because you're cooler or you don't have all the rains. So we're probably putting out, 4 or 5 flushes a year. You'll probably do a lot less than that. So, but you can still tip when the trees are younger. When they're older, you don't want to keep tipping because you're going to mess up the blooming cycle. So when a tree is about 2 or older, you don't tip until after you pick the fruit. Rob asks the question, for a large mango tree, how would you prune it back down? So you have this really big tree and you want to make it smaller. How do you do it? Well, it's difficult. One thing is you just take it all the way down all at once. That is a little tricky because you're definitely going to lose production for a few years. And you can kill the tree if it goes into too much shock and doesn't have enough reserves. But that's one way you can do it. I've done that. Another way is, you have your tree like this. Let's say it has 5 main branches. So you can just take one out 1 year and then take another one out another year. And then those will start to grow back. And then you can take out this one. So that kind of controls the height little by little. It's better not to take more than like 30% of the tree. But sometimes if you have a really big tree, you want to take it down all at once. I understand. If you do that, you're going to get a lot of regrowth. So you're going to want to thin out the regrowth. The other thing is you just keep it as a shade tree and enjoy the mangoes because it's hard to really get a big tree under control once it gets big. Lori asked, when's the best time of year to apply fertilizer? So for us, we have a rainy season, so that's when we do it. Also, for you guys, I would say, just spread it out through the year. Just spread it out little by little. Take what you would normally put if you did it twice and spread it out, maybe divide it up to 10 different fertilizations. Just do a little tiny bit at a time. Alva says, thank you. Alva, you're welcome. Teresa says, what's the lowest temperature that a mango can endure? Can it take one night of 32 degrees in December? A bigger tree could. A young tree, that's probably gonna do a lot of damage. A bigger tree could take it. Now, there are ways that you can protect your tree. You can wrap it. You can use irrigation to water the ground before it gets cold, or you can use irrigation on the tree all night, and that will keep the tree warm, but you can't shut it off. It has to be going all through the night. And as the water freezes, it lets off a little energy that keeps the middle of the tree warm enough that it doesn't freeze. So look into that if you have young trees. Lori says, I have a young tree that I think is dying. Trunk appears to be terribly cracked, probably not getting quite as much sun as it should. Would water fluctuation cause cracking of the trunk? I don't know. We don't get a lot of that. I would guess that it could. Kay Martin has put my email and phone number in the chat. Thank you, Kay Martin. So there it is for those of you that wanted it. Lori says, please share a nice recipe for propagating seeds. Okay, seeds, mango seeds. What you want to do is take the seed out and then remove the husk, and then take that middle portion and just lay it down in some good, well-draining soil. And then that will pop up a nice mango for you. Now, some mango seeds are polyembryonic, which means they'll have multiple seeds from multiple growths from one seed. So if you plant a seed and it comes up with 5 mango seeds from one seed, that's a polyembryonic. Nothing wrong with that. Kathy says, how do you cut off flowers on new trees to put the energy back in the tree? I read you only have to do the flower spike, but what do you suggest? Yeah, I just take off the flower spike. That's fine. Linda asked, any way to prevent dieback? I'm not sure what's causing the dieback, but whatever's causing it, don't do that. How about that? No, I don't know what's causing the dieback. So things that can cause dieback are too much fertilizer, herbicide damage. Maybe it's too intense sunlight. Not enough minor elements can cause it. Too much water, not enough water. Those are things that could cause dieback, I believe. Oh, weed whacking the trunk could cause it. Kathy says, I have heard wind can kill young mangoes. Is this true? And should you just stake a tree in a windy area? So you guys get real wind. We get wind just when there's hurricanes, but you get a lot of wind. So what I like to do with my stakes is you stake the tree, but you wrap it kind of loose. So the stake will keep the tree from falling over, but it's not like attached to the stake. So it's kind of loose. So it can move a little and strengthen up, but it's not going to fall over. Margaret, you're welcome. Renelle asks, how tall will a dwarf tree grow? Remember, they're not dwarfs, so they'll get big. If you just plant them and let them go, they'll get 30, 40 feet. So they're not really dwarfs. You got to keep them pruned. Alva says, is there a specific brand of organic fertilizer you recommend for a young tree? I don't know of one. I'm sure there are some good ones. You'd have to look into that. But remember, you want that nitrogen number to be low. David, you have a question?
I just was going to make a statement. One of the ways I start my seeds, I like to buy a few of the mangoes at the stores periodically, and I took some out of Alpho seeds, and I just throw them in the worm bin, and then when the cotyledon starts to pop out, then I'll pop off the husk, and the seed coat usually will come off fairly easily at that time. Jim Neitzel used to do a lot of the same propagating that way. And I this last week pulled out 4 mango seeds that have all got maybe 2-inch growth on the top of them, and they've all been transplanted into quart planters, or gallon planters, I mean,
Yeah.
and they're beautiful right now.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's easier than the way I do it, because when I take off the husk, it's difficult. I have to use pruners and cut them and spread them and pull them, so it's hard. Thanks for that, David. Lori asks, she's in Santa Barbara. Do you think it's better to drip irrigate or sprinkler? I don't know. Someone else can probably answer that better. I think both will work here, but I don't know what's better in Santa Barbara. But I would say,
Question.
yes,
I have a, you called it something, you pronounce it different. I call it Malika. What do you call it again?
Malika.
Malika. And the leaves are very droopy, and I've checked it for water, and it's pretty moist. Is that just the way it grows, or is that pointing to too much water?
Yeah, too much water can look just like not enough water.
Okay,
But
yeah.
if you're watering a lot, that, if you're watering when the ground's already wet, then that could be causing that.
So have you, some mangoes kind of grow that way with a really droopy looking leaf, or is that not normal for any mangoes?
I don't think they might be droopy when they first come out, but they're not droopy.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, guys, I think we got all the questions. It's getting to my bedtime over here on the East Coast. So I think I'm done.
Can I ask you one more question, Jeff?
Of course.
So can you have an opinion on a Florida-grown mango that shipped to San Diego? What do you think can we expect to have the same results, seeing it's grown in like different soil, and then they got to bare root it and send it over here? And
You're talking about
a nursery?
a tree.
Uh-huh.
It could be done, but the bare rooting is quite it's hard when you bare root something to get it to grow back, because you're taking off all those little tiny roots. So it's not easy. It can be done though.
Yeah.
If that's the only way you can get these cultivars, then I would still do it. But you can also, if you know how to graft, you can just get the budwood and graft it. I know you have people in your club that can graft, so that would probably be the ideal way to do it, rather than to bare root something.
So grow our own seeds and our own rootstock probably, and then,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
A lot of thank yous. You're welcome. Martha has one more question. Can you use any variety for seed growing? I guess that's for the rootstock. We use something called turpentine because we have that high pH limestone, but I think you could probably get away with most of your mangoes as rootstock. You wouldn't need turpentine because you don't have that rocky high pH soil that we have. Frank says, what are the dangers of ordering cyanwood from Florida to California? You're always in danger of bringing some disease or some pest. That would be the danger. I know you guys have a lot of rules about getting stuff into California, and that's why, because you don't want a pest that we have here to get over there.
Yeah, like the Hong Long Ving from the orange groves.
Yeah, I think we gave you that already, though. We have something now called the lychee Iranos mite, which is really bad. So you don't want that. Don't take any lychees from Florida, any lychee trees.
Oh. So is the pH important with the mangoes? I've heard it needs the acidic soil. I guess in Florida, you don't have a choice. You get what you get, I guess.
Yeah, it grows well. We have a pH of about 7.8, 8.4, and it grows fine in that, especially with the rootstock that we use. I don't know if it can grow in really acidic soil. I've never thought about it, but I don't know. Your soil is, someone said it's has a lot of clay. So that wouldn't be good. I would definitely try to mound your trees a little bit and, make that soil just well draining, and very clean soil, and something that's not going to wash away. Make it heavy enough it's not going to wash away.
So your soil is 7.5 to 8? I was understanding that it was below 7 or even 6.
Us, no, 7 is neutral.
Yeah.
So we're above that.
Oh. That's good to know.
Yeah, we're very high pH for a plant. So our micro elements, when you put them in the ground, they don't get to the plant. They get bound up because of the high pH. So we have to do micro elements. We spray them on the leaves, or we use chelated products.
Oh. So wood ash would work good for mangoes.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Well, I'm gonna experiment.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it. Very good questions.
All right, Jeff, thanks very much. And I'll send you an email tomorrow. And
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye, guys.
Very good.